Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Bartkus, the director of the Ridgefield Historical Society. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Ridgefield History Club here at the Scott House. We're at 4 Sunset Lane in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Today's date is Tuesday, February 18th, 2025, and it's great to see all of you. The Ridgefield Historical Society is an independent nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving and sharing Ridgefield's historical, cultural, and architectural heritage from the indigenous people who lived here thousands of years ago all the way up to the present day. For everyone here and on Facebook, I invite you to get involved in the exciting and important work that we do by becoming members and volunteers of the Ridgefield Historical Society. So if you're curious about Ridgefield's history, today is your lucky day. We have Jack Sanders with us, and he's going to be helping us explore his new book, the Ridgefield Encyclopedia. This is a great new book that he's published, and it has over 5,000 entries related to Ridgefield, Connecticut. And we envision today's program as being one where you can bring your questions about Ridgefield to ask Jack, and we can see what the answers are in the Ridgefield Encyclopedia. And I know that Jack is also very interested in adding new content to the book. It's going to be updated as time moves forward, so if you have anything that's not currently in the encyclopedia, some things that we'll talk today may be candidates for the next edition of the encyclopedia. So I would like to hand it over to Jack, and Jack, I'm wondering if you might be able to tell us what inspired you to create the Ridgefield Encyclopedia and what that process was like.
Okay, well, as many of you know, I worked for the newspaper for close to 50 years, and at some point, probably in the 80s, I started making little notes of things because my memory is not great. So I would have access to information. For instance, I had lists of who were the first selectmen during various times during the 20th century, because their names would come up in stories. Who were the superintendents of school? Who were school board members, and things like that. And started collecting maps and other pieces of information so that I could look up stuff, because there weren't a lot of references available. There are histories of Ridgefield. There was the State Register and Manual, which I think is still published, which was reporters and editors used all the time, excuse me, to find out who the officials were, not only this year, but maybe 20 years ago. You might be doing an obituary, and you want to know, when was so-and-so on the Zoning Board of Appeals? You could look that up, and we had a big library of past state register manuals. But anyway, I started making all these notes, and then at some point, after retirement in 2014, excuse me, I decided to compile it into a document that was searchable. And one of the beauties of computers is that you can put thousands and thousands of words into a file and just with Control F search the whole document for a single term, and it'll come right up. And so I started in alphabetical order, keeping track of all different kinds of things that I was writing about. I've done about a dozen books since I retired, and in doing those, you come up with lots of facts, little pieces of information that you might use in the future or somebody else might find handy. So mark it down, put it in this collection. then I started really getting fanatic about it, and I took my book, The Ridgefield Names, which I spent 40 years compiling, and did concise entries for each one of the names in the encyclopedia. And then I went through all my people files. I have about 1,000 files on people who live in or have lived in town, mostly have lived in, because they're mostly dead, who were of some interest or accomplishment, and I stuck all those in there, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, about 4 years ago, I decided to call it the Ridgefield Encyclopedia, and I supplied the Historical Society with a copy, which they put online, and I supplied the Ridgefield Library with a copy, and they put online. And as I've updated it, I've given the library and the Historical Society updated electronic versions until recently, when I decided, what the heck, let's stick it in a book, because it's pretty easy to do. It's just a pain in the neck to format it, all the boldface and whiteface and italics. But, to create a book is not a difficult thing to do. And I thought for a lot of people that would be handier than having to have a computer, or you can pull out your watch and look it up, or pull out your phone, and look it up. Having a book would be useful. And so last November I came out with the first edition of this thing. I plan to update it at least once, probably twice a year, because every day it's being updated on my side. I keep adding things, I keep finding mistakes, mostly typos, some duplications. So it's a constant living thing. It's always changing and getting bigger. It's up to 334,629 words. That's a lot of stuff to keep track of. And fortunately, it's alphabetical, and fortunately, I can search very quickly to find things. What I had hoped today is not only maybe you have some questions about stuff, like somebody just asked when the train line came into town. That picture that's on here shows the station not long after it opened in 1870. There it is, yeah. And someplace, the names of those kids are available, and maybe some of those train workers. But that was taken right over here behind the where Ridgefield Supply is now, just behind, down the hill from the library. But anyway, I hope to be able to answer. I want to see whether this book is able to answer a lot of these questions that you may have. And I'm hoping that you'll come up with some questions that should be in it that aren't, so that I can have inspiration for adding things. And maybe some point we run out of questions or comments, so we can go through these and see what is in the encyclopedia about these pictures, which Betsy picked out, not, I don't think because of the encyclopedia, just because they're history pictures, interesting shots of town.
Yes.
You didn't cross-check them or anything with the encyclopedia, right?
A couple of them I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to find ones that aren't in there. There's a couple of pictures that are missing. I was wondering if you had Gys Landsberger in your encyclopedia.
Who?
Gys Landsberger.
Yeah. Tell me why I should.
Okay. She lived in Ridgefield and taught French at Founders Hall. She was born in Berlin to a Jewish family in the 1930s. Her father took their family to France in 1933. And then when things got bad in France, Gis, her brother, and her future husband paid a guide to lead them over the Pyrenees into Spain. And they eventually arrived in the United States in 1943. But the interesting thing is that Varian Fry rescued her husband's parents. And they came to the United States later. But she didn't know that Varian Fry lived in Ridgefield until she read his obituary. And so she never was able to thank him for what he had done. So
Did he know she
1968
was
he
in
died, right?
Ridgefield?
no,
No.
they didn't know each other.
And where did she live?
On Ketchum Road.
Off Pinpack.
Yeah.
I knew maybe it was her son, Peter Landsberger, because I lived on Continental and, small neighborhoods. And so when you brought up the name Landsberger, I was like, oh, I know the Landsbergers. And I've been to their house a long time ago, back in the
Oh, so you've been
60s,
there.
70s, yeah. And I have no idea what happened with Peter or his sister.
Peter passed away
Yeah.
not long ago.
Oh.
Joe Fossey lives in this
Yeah.
house now.
Joe Fossey bought all of that now.
Oh, okay.
When did she die?
Oh gosh.
A couple years ago.
We did her oral history here, so that's all on our online collection. I'm not sure when she died.
And her last name is spelled?
Landsberger.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. No, that's definitely somebody that should be included, along with that story about how she didn't know that Varian Fry lived right down the street from where Sally and I live. Okay, excellent.
When you were going through all of this, it got me thinking, Parks and Rec. How long has Parks and Rec been a part of Ridgefield, in terms of a group? And I remember back in the 70s when the Parks and Rec office was on the corner of Market and Main Street.
Yeah.
And I knew Bob Kelly and Jack Disher. They were two of the directors of Parks and Recreation.
The first director was Bill Syram,
Oh, it was Bill.
and then it was Dave Hebert.
Yeah.
Dave.
And Dave Hebert is still alive and
Oh.
selling honey.
Wow.
He has a farm in Oxford, Massachusetts, and he
Oh,
sells honey on the internet in
Yeah.
places, I suppose. But
yeah.
he was a guy who kept the oxen, Jeb and Dan, remember them?
Mhm.
Yeah.
During the Ridgefield's celebration of the bicentennial
Right.
and the Battle of Ridgefield 200.
Right.
When the Connecticut Fifth would be led by Jeb and Dan, the oxen.
Right. Right. And
He kept them up at Richardson Park,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Hebert.
where he lived,
Yeah, I remember.
on these Parks and Rec property. And
Yep.
then there was a guy in between, what's his name? Between Hebert and,
Paul?
yeah, he's in here.
It,
But,
Well,
Paul,
it wasn't.
Paul Roach.
and then
Paul
Paul
Roach.
Roach,
Yeah.
who
That came after.
he became one of the longest serving
Right.
town paid officials. He and Ozzie Ingles and now Garzi. still working away, after, I got more than 40 years. But, yeah, Paul Roach was there for a long time and saw
Yeah.
a lot of the changes.
If I
Yeah.
remember my records correctly, it was originally just the Parks Commission.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh.
And then it became Parks and Rec in late fifties maybe? Early
yeah.
60s?
It should be in the, it's, Carl Nash was one of the original parks
Yeah, yeah.
commissioners, I think, and so was Miss Richardson?
Maybe.
I don't see it.
And Chick Chicoli was the, I don't know what they called him back then.
Maintenance?
Yeah, he was in charge of all the maintenance for years and years
Yeah. He,
before it became Parks and Rec.
oh, because I remember him in the 70s when I was lifeguarding
Yeah.
at Great Pond. And Chick Chicoli would drive up sometimes and,
Yeah,
you know, he was a great guy.
yeah, he was.
Yeah.
I think he was the only one on
Yeah.
the Parks Commission that took care of everything. As the main maintenance person anyway.
And is that why the baseball field's named after him?
Yes, right, Bob, absolutely.
Yeah, I just came across a 1974 program guide for Parks and Recreation. And it listed 3 employees, Hebert Disher, who was the recreation director, and Chick Chicoli.
Oh.
That's when they were in that 19 Market Street.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember scrambling every year, our parents to come up with the money to get those beach tags every year. Little plastic ones.
Yeah, you remember?
And I remember the person who would check you in.
Officer
Make sure-
Brady.
Chief
Chief
Brady.
Yeah.
Chief Brady. He was former police chief.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'd be sitting in his chair.
Yeah, he's in the
Yeah.
gym.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, there's something that needs to be amplified, and there's a listing for parks in there, and it tells about how there are 2 state parks, and it lists many of the town parks, but it doesn't talk about the Parks and Recreation Commission, and it ought to. Okay. Any other questions or suggestions?
Do you remember anything about the Kiernan Sloan Market on Main Street? Because I think Cynthia Biagiotti's father was a butcher there. You know anything?
And what's in it?
Kiernan Sloan, I believe. It was where I think Capiello's was there. I don't know what's there right now, but it's next to where Phil Martin had his
It's that
house there.
nature's, this
Is that what it is?
organic drink.
Yeah.
Sloan, like in
Restaurant.
SLOAN?
I believe so. I don't know why that sticks in my mind, but
Emma Sloan Greger owned the Book Barn on the Woodland Road West. Everybody, you remember the Book Barn at the, right at the town line? That's, I guess that was out of business. Sloan Sporting Goods was here, sold Beretta arms.
I remember going to Nina's. I'm sure that's
That's
in your, yeah.
And previous versions of that restaurant.
Oh, I only remember the one that is now a bank at the corner of 116 and 35.
Yeah. Jack, we talked about the little kind of convenience stores all over town. Do you have Siemens in there and
The
McElway?
Titica store, you mean?
Pardon me?
Titica store?
Yes, you have
Yeah,
that.
that's in
And
there.
how about McElway's?
up farther
On
on
your
North Salem
Decorah
Road.
Trail?
Yeah,
Why?
Okay.
that's, what is it, Decorah Trail?
Yes,
the lower
Decorah Trail, yeah, right there. Okay,
And that building is still there, right? It's just that,
no, they turned it into they built that big house
Yeah.
and
Right.
then a
There's-
garage.
There's still a house down below to the left of the driveway.
That little house,
Yeah,
It could be.
there's a
That
place
little
that kind
cute
of
little
looks
house?
like it had been a.
what?
That cute
They
little
have
house.
gas-
It's a,
They
it's a
had
tiny
gasoline
house.
and you could stop
it's
and get
like
ice
one, maybe
cream
two
and
rooms.
candy.
Yeah, it's
There
nice.
used to be a truck driver when I was in high school.
You remember the
right
gas
there,
station
and he
that
parked
was
his
out
Peterbilt
farther
cab over
out?
next to the house. It
You
was
could
bigger
see
than
the
that.
tree line.
My father owned that.
Uh-huh.
Really?
Right,
remember
right
it
at the
very
corner
well.
of Decorah Trail
And what
Right.
was that
and
called?
35.
Oh
Or
gosh,
160.
I don't know what they
160.
called it back then.
the
On
north
left
end.
hand
Only a
side.
gas station?
Where the church,
I
near
it
where the
was a
church
gas
is.
station
Or
and
the-
then a
the
house. The
the
house
other.
that exists there now, the gas station was to the front.
Wow.
And my father moved the gas station down to our home where Gavin Donnelly owns now, that lives in there now, you know, but, I can't remember the name of it, what it was. But same type of thing, gas and soda, candy.
Convenience store.
My mother used to pump the gas.
Well, like Hilltop Shell there, which was,
Exactly.
it's a shame that it went the way it has gone.
Someday.
Someday.
Do you have about the fashion shop? And got that rented at all?
On Main Street?
Still for
Yeah.
sale.
Still for sale. People are still worried about the gas in that well.
The Kleins owned that, my mother
Yeah,
had
the
worked
Kleins.
for them.
Long
yeah.
time.
My mother
They used
worked
to be
there.
closed like on Wednesday afternoons or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
Remember? Yeah.
Yeah, the fashion shop, that was the store to go to.
And it was owned by the Klein?
Yes,
Kleins.
yes.
Yeah, she did.
Do we have the store?
Yeah, the store.
Okay, and what, does anybody know the first name of the clients?
Oh, it'll come to me when I walk out the door.
Mm,
Patty,
mm,
it'll come to us,
mm.
not here, when we leave.
Lunch.
Tonight at midnight, I wake up and I remember
I don't know
you.
what the name of the gas station.
You should have a 24-hour tip line for
That's a good idea.
We had a daughter.
I used to have one of those at the
Klein,
press.
I know the daughter's name was Elaine.
Did she work there, or?
No,
No,
she
Elaine
worked in the
didn't.
city.
Mm,
Um,
I got, oh, and, what years was this? This is,
This is,
1950s?
yeah.
It's about where 418 Main Street is,
yeah, yeah. Patty's mother worked there.
They were there in 1960.
Was it there in 60, Barb?
Yeah, 'cause that's when I moved into town and fashion shop was still
Yeah,
there.
I think so.
So I should be able to find that.
Ridgefield Glass
or in
System?
a,
No, Glass
Straight
Guys.
directory.
No, there's,
My mother had worked at
It's on Main
Brundidge's shop
Street.
too.
Okay.
Oh,
which is
yeah.
where
in
George-
between,
where George,
where used to be the
yeah.
And the
institution.
Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
I remember that.
Mildred,
Mildred.
Mildred Klein, Mildred.
Mildred Klein.
Good memory.
That is,
Search that file.
Charlie?
What store is that?
That's BD's. That was on the corner of Bailey Avenue across from the town hall.
Right. That was there,
Hmm.
maybe,
Long
when I
time.
came here.
Any other
95.
suggestions or
Probably till about 2000 or something.
questions?
Well, I was just looking to see if you had the yarn bee and the yardage shop. You do.
Okay.
Yeah, yardage shop.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have a section on churches.
Yeah.
Like, what was the first church?
I was thinking of that.
Congregation.
Congregation.
What?
For the congregation
Congregation.
church, the town was essentially created by Congregationalists
Okay.
in 1708.
What's the time?
It was the only church for,
What was it, 1708, you said?
yeah,
So that's when the town was incorporated.
Yes.
yeah, that's when it was settled, yeah.
Yes.
It was settlement began.
What was the initial population?
there were 24 families.
Initial, there were 20 about
24.
25 families.
Right.
But not all of them moved to town right away, and not all of them even moved to town ever. Some just bowed out and sold.
Now,
Or
over
given
the,
lots.
over
Right.
the years, has the
Exactly.
town increased in acreage size?
The town has decreased.
Mm-hmm.
Ridgefield, a lot of people don't realize that Ridgefield used to be much bigger than it is now. It used to extend all the way to New Fairfield.
Oh, you mean
So western Danbury, where like Richter Park is, was all Ridgefield. But it also went 1.75 miles into what's now New York State.
Wow.
So, South Salem, Vista, not Upper Vista, Wacabuck, that area across, and North Salem, much of North Salem were all part of Ridgefield
How did that get
before
changed?
1730.
Why was it changed?
There was a long-standing dispute between New York and Connecticut over what was the western Connecticut boundary line. And they finally settled it pretty much in 1730. It took them a few more decades to actually totally set it officially, but
Didn't they call that the Oblong?
they called it the Oblong. And we got Greenwich in exchange for the land that we lost, which a lot of people wonder whether it was a good exchange. But Greenwich was on the water, which was an important thing, having seaport access. And so all the rest of this, the Oblong is inland, so it was considered a fairly good exchange back then.
Jack, I'm curious whether there are any Scots here, because I live in a
Yes.
Scot house. It was built by a Scot in 1735. Are there any Scots here?
Sarah's, oh, in here?
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
no.
No?
But I think Sarah Scott
Uh-huh.
from the Ridgefield Hardware Store is related to
Oh,
some of the Scots.
oh. The
Oh, well.
Sarah that's still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
There are a lot of Scots in town though that are descendants of the original Scots.
Yeah, and they, not necessarily with the Scott name anymore, but it's a family that has stuck to town more than a lot of others. Keelers, we still have Keelers here, right?
Yeah.
And,
Just came up, Charlie Klein, Charles Klein.
oh,
And Mildred.
Go, Pat.
Charles was into fashion too.
Who?
Charlie
He-
was into.
Oh, yeah, he worked there.
He owned it.
He owned it.
Charles.
Yeah, he worked in the store with his wife.
What was the name of the store?
Fashion shop.
I wish we still had it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
I
was
wish
a
we
nice-
did too.
Back in the day when Jonathan Logan was a name that a lot of us wore, they carried that brand.
They had
Ship
every,
and Shore.
right, they had everything from
That's
shoes
where you
to
got your
coats.
blouse,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where we got our
probably.
blouses.
That's all right.
Come on in.
Sorry, let's look at some of these and maybe they'll inspire some more. Who is that?
Mrs. Petrone.
Mrs. Petroni was the mother of Romeo Petroni. And also, who was Romeo's sister that went into the
Mary.
Mary.
who was the first woman from Ridgefield to enlist in World War II. And she had been a nurse at Danbury Hospital and
No,
went into the,
She wasn't that old.
no, this is, there was a patron, oh, no, I'm sorry,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Romeo.
That's why it's good to read.
81-year-old brain. It's Romeo.
Yeah, Nina Romeo was the nurse.
Nina.
Yeah, yeah.
She was was the first to enlist, that's right.
Yes. Right. Oh, you got that right, the Romeo part.
It's always confusing, the Romeos and Romeo Petroni. There's no connection with why Romeo Petroni was named Romeo. No. Okay.
He's the one that led that group to Italy. Wasn't it Romeo Petroni that led that group to Italy?
For what?
For half of the Italians in Ridgefield,
Oh,
they did
yes.
that trip.
As far as
From
the
the
Italian
Italian
club.
Yeah, the club, because I have a picture of everyone that went.
His sister Mary worked in, I think, Washington. I don't know if she was part of, in the diplomatic corps or whatever, but she worked in Washington,
Yeah, no,
right?
I'm thinking of Romeo. Okay.
Well, my first year in practice, Romeo was a judge in New Haven, and I appeared before him, and I thought that was nice. I was in a strange city, and there's a guy sentencing my client for a crime he committed. There's Romeo.
And then Romeo was there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probation. It was fun.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so everybody recognizes this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But I believe, I can't tell for sure, but can anybody see a stoplight anywhere there, or is this when they,
What's on the floor here?
well, it's a street light, but I don't know if there's a stoplight.
What's this?
That's a sign.
Sign?
I think, I don't know.
It's got some bumps in it, so.
Yeah,
yeah.
and
I think
I
that's a
think
traffic
those
light.
are,
Yeah.
maybe those are the first traffic lights.
Yeah,
Those are the first traffic
There's
lights.
a box down at the bottom.
Yeah, they go sideways.
Yeah.
It's true.
When that, where Scott House was?
Because they're not hanging from
What do you
something.
mean?
There's the Scott House
right there.
There.
Yeah.
Katona.
up there. Can anybody date that car?
No.
So this is probably 30s, right?
20s
Yeah,
and 30s.
late 20s or.
So that
Cars there, one looking over.
We could only get the
Oh.
traffic back.
By
Yeah.
this, that this picture was
That, I
taken
think,
in
was
that,
Jesse Lee.
that
I
wing
think
of
that
the
was-
Bedient building that
I think that was Jesse Lee.
extends out towards Bailey Avenue, where the stairwell is.
Right.
So there's windows in there, and I guess this is maybe Hartman.
I think it's Hartman's studio. It was taken from Hartman's studio.
Which one?
Well, was his studio in that,
Yeah.
in the part that hung out over the,
Oh, you mean that?
because this is
That's from the side.
here's the building
Yeah.
here, this is the Bedient building,
Yeah.
and this is, you know how there's that
Yeah.
stairwell projection?
What year was the church taken down, Jack?
64?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could have been in the 50s.
So that was Jesse
Oh,
Lee?
this has got to
That
be
was the
before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait, the
that
car.
looks- that
Yeah.
looks like a 30s Ford
Yeah.
on the street there.
I can't see the car from here.
Yeah, this is another one.
64, wow, I
like my
remember that.
father's
Bob
Model
Swanson were here, he would,
Yeah, he'd know the car.
but you could probably figure out what those signs are saying. There's another view of this in here, I think. Of this building. This is actually, this picture,
Governor Street.
Francis Martin maintains that this is he. And he was the president of this bank then, which was the,
First Union?
the,
Union Trust?
First National Bank and
First
Trust
National,
Company
yes.
of Ridgefield. He was the president, and these were chauffeurs that he was talking to.
Yeah.
And that's one of the chauffeur cars, and over here, if this picture is cropped, but over here, you can see the front of another one of them. This has been made into a color postcard, which is, from the 20s or 30s.
So whose house was that next to?
This,
Yeah, that big
That-
one.
that is where the Ridgefield Savings Bank built this building, and this was moved back, and you guys remember when it was in the backland, right? It sat behind.
Just say
Like
yeah,
that old.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, those cars look
Well,
familiar.
I think it was taken down in the fifties. It was torn down in the fifties. It
It
lasted
could be,
a long time.
yeah.
But there was a Chinese laundry in here, and there was other things. This is, I think, I can't remember for sure whether this was the last spot that was burned in the Great Fire. Everything from there south was burned, or whether this was one that survived. This building was built in 1910, I believe, right around 1910. Still uses a
Still
bank.
there, yeah.
It's cool. And they maintain that same facade, which is through all of the many chain banks that have owned this. And now,
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo, they all have taken good care of it.
Yes, it has, it's so beautiful inside.
It's cool.
Building opened in 1911.
1911, okay.
Still has the marble floors.
Yeah.
And the bell alarm
course, this
outside
is
in the
the-
cage.
The
Oh,
Bissell,
yeah.
the old Bissell
You gotta be
building,
careful when you go down those stairs, it's
The
all
old-
marble.
Bissell Pharmacy over here, and at this time, I don't
Butcher
know
shop.
what was there.
It's a
but-
butthole, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a barbecue.
Is there a
Yeah,
butcher
that's
shop?
for this place, I think, though.
Oh,
There was a, no, it could have been a barber there, but there was a auto garage in there for a long time, where later was Brunetti's and
The A&P before that,
the
yeah.
A&P and
Down in back, yeah.
They were
the
bowling.
Tavern now, or is it, what do they
it's
call it?
the lantern.
The Lantern.
There were bowling alleys down in the back of that
Yeah,
too, Jack.
yeah, yeah. I have an aerial picture that shows all those buildings back. There was like another street behind
Yeah,
Main Street back
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And this house was on one of them, it was used for apartments. This was the Masons, was that Eddie Allen?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Who else do you recognize?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Woodcock in the back, way
Oh,
in the
yeah.
back.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Gordon Walsh over on the left, second from
Oh,
the
yes.
left coming in.
Who's that?
Oh, Carlton Schofield.
Ah,
Who's the Grand Master with the top hat?
That I don't know. Heard them carefully.
there's a microphone, so, oh, there's actually a calendar up there.
I know.
Nice, you could probably blow that up.
Jack,
No,
I was just gonna say how it's amazing the Masons are still here when all the Odd Fellows and the
Yeah.
Pilgrims and all the other
I think
clubs.
they're kind of just hanging on.
They're
though.
still, they've been here for a long time and they're still operating.
Yeah, it's the oldest organization in town.
What do they
Oh,
do?
wow.
It's a secret.
It's a secret.
It is a secret. You couldn't talk about it. You couldn't ask anybody about it.
So
Nobody would
mysterious.
tell you.
No,
Very true.
Not here.
That's-
no, you
Okay.
never saw anybody going up and down the stairs there.
No.
And what's the story on this, Betsy?
This picture came from the Ridgefield Library. Remember that history room they used to have there? Phineas Lounsbury is there, and I think it's his wife behind him. They had a summer home in the Adirondacks, Racket Lake, I think they called it.
Oh.
And that's a cast of characters
Yeah, definitely.
who
You notice they all have
Interesting.
ties, all the men have ties
all
on?
dressed up, yeah.
There was this camp just across the Ridgefield line on, near Wakaba, called Camp. No, it's the turn of the 19th century, and there are pictures of it. What's the sports chain, big chain sports store that's high end?
Not REI.
No, the one that has a place in Bridgeport or
Oh,
But anyway, they sell this picture of these guys in the woods in front of a building like that with guns and all that.
Cabela's?
But with, what's that?
Cabela's, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's it, yeah. And they all have white shirts and ties on it too. They're out in the wilderness, they're hunting
Yeah.
and fishing, and they're all dressed up.
Poor Patty.
Going back to that picture, it's a great picture.
That is a nice picture.
Very
Well,
nice.
now that would be typical of a high school
Yeah.
yearbook picture.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, with the Peter Pan collar.
Yeah.
And collar,
Yeah.
and the embroidery on the,
And what's that?
that's a
It's her monogram.
My initials.
Or they used to, when,
They said got
in the
lost.
sixties, if you made the National Honor Society, you made sure to wear that when you got a picture taken.
Who's the person over on the right?
The extreme
Okay.
right,
Yeah, who's that?
Far right is
Franceschini.
Oh,
Bruno,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, 'cause that's Primo and that's Frankie and that's,
No, it's not Primo, that's my grandfather, Enrico
that's your
Frullo.
grandfather there?
Yes,
No
Which one?
kidding.
yes.
Barb, on the left.
No,
Man
straight
with the white
ahead.
hair,
With the white hair?
with
Yeah.
holding the,
You know, and it's funny, cause when I see that, it looks a little like Carl Nash.
like,
Hmm.
oh, yeah,
Carl.
no.
And that's
The
Jimmy,
white hair,
was-
anyway.
He was a
that's
big
Jimmy
in the-
Cuca.
What was his name, Barb?
Enrico Frullo.
Ah, yeah, that's
is
why I
the
have
Frullo?
Enrico.
What are
Frullo.
they doing?
Roasting the pig, aren't they?
That's Pit,
Yeah.
that's
It's a-
Porchetta,
it's a
the
roast.
Italian club.
That is,
Is that still there, this,
I think it is.
yes.
I think it is
Yeah,
too.
to
Yeah.
the building in the
Yeah.
back.
In the back, in the
I'd say
garage.
It's still there in the back.
Yeah.
But no one knows what it's for anymore.
No,
Well, we know.
we know.
Bob, you're too young.
this is,
Yeah.
I believe Cephalo
Did you ever go to any of the,
Only for Ozzy's retirement party.
oh,
And he had an estate that
We
covered
were Irish.
more than 1,000 or nearly 1,000 acres, including what's now Pierpont State Park, which he gave to the state in his will, and he had also expressed hope that his wife, when she died, would bequeath the rest of his property to the state for expanding the park, but she didn't, and she sold it to a Jerry Tuccio, who turned it into the Twigs Hills subdivision. Um, But other parts, other pieces bordering this have been acquired by the Conservation Commission over the years. And it's really Cephalo Pierpont State Park and the town-owned land around it. It's really become a wonderful piece of open space. But this guy was a member of a rich family from New York, and he came up here around 1914 and amassed this estate that included many Scott properties
yes.
in Scotland, most of which still stands, the houses, and he protected most of the houses.
Did he own all the land where the schools are?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, where Barlow Mountain and Scotland schools are.
Right.
And he built what's now called Pierpont Pond, which he did not want called that. He wanted it called Lake Naranika, after an American Indian who was one of the signers of the early deeds. But he was also active in the town. He was on the Board of Finance for 30 years. He was a vestry at St. Stephen's, a big muckety muck at St. Stephen's. So he was also involved in state government. He's a state rep, but he was also held official positions in state government. So he was a person that devoted a lot to the community and gave a lot.
There, the band behind him?
This is at a celebration, I believe, for the either Washington's 200th birthday or Connecticut's 300th birthday in the 30s.
So where is this? Can you-
I think it's up at the old high school field, but I'm not sure.
So there's leaves on the tree, so it's probably not Washington's birthday.
Well,
No, well, but the celebration, I think.
Oh,
is
okay,
on.
got it.
and look at cigarette in the mouth of the band member, and he's got a cigarette in his hand.
I,
that he's
I
hiding.
believe that those people have been identified.
Yeah,
There's been a little
is
bit.
that like the Ridgefield band?
I can't remember.
What was his relationship to the Pierponts that live on Main Street,
They're related, but, you know,
but not close?
they're both from, like Brooklyn, Pierponts.
Yeah, yeah.
He's Seth Lowe Pierpont, named after I think his grandfather was mayor of New York, or his great-grandfather, and the other, the guy on Main Street across from Casagua
Yeah.
was, what was his name?
John Jay?
Commander John J. Pierpont.
Yeah, he was a commander, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
he's
So
not
he's-
club commander, I
Yeah.
believe. But he was related to John Jay, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you guys know.
Yeah,
more
that's,
about-
I think that's Bob and Helen and Coach Allen, and I don't know who that young girl is, and that's Tammy
Oh, that's
Sullivan.
Tammy, right?
And Sandy,
Sandy
and, huh?
Sandy's the young kid, you can see his face, it's probably his other
Yeah,
daughter.
no, next to Sandy is Tammy.
It's
Okay,
Tammy.
That's
Yeah.
Tammy, and I don't know who the
Left to right.
young girl
Third
is.
from left,
That's the
what-
other sister, the Alan's sister Barbara.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Barbara, the one right next
That's
to Coach
Coach's
Allen.
Sullivan,
Yeah.
yes.
I
that's
don't know
Barbara.
the one in the middle, but it's Sandy
That's,
and
no,
Barbara.
that's Tammy.
That's Tammy.
That's Tammy
Oh,
in the
it's
middle.
Tammy and Jane.
Yeah, Tammy next to Sandy.
And that is Helen Grant.
Yeah.
And what this is Victor Gilbert.
Right.
Who operated the Stonehenge Inn.
Yeah.
And every week, he would have somebody on as a guest to, and quite often they were famous people. I just
Yeah.
ran across a picture of him with Judy Garland.
Yeah.
But, so, I think,
Mm.
well, there it is. There's a microphone.
Yeah,
It was broadcast over WLAD in Danbury,
right.
and it was a weekly interview show, and I don't know why Coach Allen was being interviewed. Maybe he had just won some award, or the some team had just done something, or maybe the Ridgefield just go 11-man football, or,
I don't know.
yeah. We have,
You know that.
a person here who was in that picture. That was in 1999, right?
Yeah, right. For the 2000 celebration. A lot of newspapers, a lot of things that were going on at the time that we put in there.
How is that
Office
history
bags
already?
to, Kane Funeral
How is that
Home.
history already?
Yeah, that's
It's
history.
amazing.
But now, do you know, obviously you know where that is.
Not obviously.
Hopefully not in St. Mary's.
It's
Well,
in
you know,
front of the community center.
Oh, this is in front of the
Oh,
community.
yeah, right in front of the community center, the exact spot, I don't know, and,
Is it
We need a
across
marker.
the driveway?
yes, across from the driveway where the, the grass area in the front.
Where they put the beautiful garden in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think
Where
it
the
may be
fountain
is
right
now.
there.
I don't think they're gonna dig it up.
People, were always getting requests, especially from the elementary schools who were apparently burying,
Yeah. Yeah, Veterans
these
Time
things.
capsules.
Did the-
Yeah, time capsules all the
Yeah,
time from,
yeah, they did a lot.
and nobody can remember where they were.
No, that's it. We have to go and mark it.
And the other person in that picture was Mary
Wait,
Boyd, who was the
Mary
tax
Hart.
collector at the time.
yeah, she was tax.
And you
Is
might
she
be able to
still at
find
the
her at the
library?
library, right?
Yes,
Yes.
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 This is the train station on the site of the Ridgefield Supply Company, which Ridgefield Supply and its predecessors used as a storage shed for many years. And the current, or the recent management of Ridgefield Supply moved that west for a little bit and rebuilt it. Virtually none of the original building is there, but these things that are there are all the original ones.
Yeah, they tried to rebuild that building to look.
Yeah, it's supposed to be exactly the same, but, well, of course, the windows are a little different. But so much of it was rotted beyond repair that just about the only thing salvageable were these. They also managed to get a little piece of track, which they have there, but that's not where the actual track was. The track was, ran through where the medical building is now, right?
Yeah.
Patty, up to the left, that must be where you were living, right?
Right.
The houses?
Well, is this the Walker House up here?
No, that's the, yeah, that's up the hill.
No, I was talking over to the left,
Yeah.
up on,
Sunset,
yeah.
which used to be Railroad Avenue.
Oh, that's,
Well, this is, I thought this was down close to Gasparini's, Brunetti's,
It was.
so,
isn't that Grove Street then?
no, it's,
Isn't this Grove Street here?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And this would be Prospect over here.
Prospect, right.
And, this is probably, I don't know whether, yeah, they had the,
And that looks like the old Walker
Tracks.
House.
The
Yeah,
restaurant is.
where Gallows is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These people have been identified, and I don't know who they are. I don't have the identifications, but this is probably, since that was built in 1870, this is probably about 1880. And this is probably the original engine that they've been using since this branch line opened. It's a very cool picture.
Look at that old locomotive. Steam coming out there.
I had a question about the Barnum Bailey animals were kept up in Ridgebury at one time. Is that,
I don't know if they were Barnum and Bailey, but they
or
were
one,
supposed to be.
one of the circus?
Turner had a circus.
Turner Farm.
Aaron Turner was born, supposedly born in Ridgebury,
Yeah.
and had an early circus. Hired P.T. Barnum as his ticket taker and treasurer.
Uh-huh.
But they reportedly kept circus animals up there, and also at some places along North Salem Road.
Oh,
There were
okay.
stories about that.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's ever come up with an elephant bone or anything like that to prove that they
Yeah.
were. But, you know, just across the line in Somers, that's where the Bailey of Barnum and Bailey was.
Right. Yeah. I don't know where I heard it, but I heard it was by the golf course up there and that area, and I guess Turner.
Turner would be
Turner's
up
farther down.
Yeah.
Turner's right on the Danbury line.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's still Turner Road.
Mm-hmm.
This is a class at West Mountain School. Knows how happy everybody was.
Where exactly was it up in West Mountain, Jack?
It's still there. It's it's a house.
It's a house, where?
Right by that corner, the
You know,
corner.
One of the places that the state straightened West Mountain Road is in front of where the Nelligan property was.
Oh.
And that little road that runs in and out where the Nelligans live.
Okay.
That's what, an old West Mountain Road strip. And
That's where
this
the
house
school
is
was?
sitting on
See
the
when you're trying to mark.
Yeah,
western part of that.
I remember where Dr.
Okay.
Dawkins
For some reason or other, they call it Antenna Road or something like that. The maps have some weird name for it. But, you know, you can still, Nelligan's house is not there anymore.
Right.
People, the people that bought the property tore it down because it was, again, beyond reasonable repair, I guess, and put up some kind of a more modern but interesting house apparently.
Do you have a date on the picture?
What's that?
A date on that picture?
This would be probably about 1910, 15. The school was closed. I don't think it was one of the original ones that was closed when the East Ridge School opened in 1915.
Became a private school. No, that's, no, liar. Last used in 1929.
29. Dick Venus has a wonderful story about his sister who lived with the family on Main Street then, having to go do her student teaching at this school house. And it was during the winter, and she would normally drive a car up there, but this is up on fairly wild, and even wilder then, part of West Mountain, and she would have to walk in snow. A couple, 2 or 3 miles to get to her job and back. But all of these people, all of these kids have been identified, including that teacher who's,
Who was the teacher? Do you know?
he's identified, and he's an old Ridgefield family. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Looks
Looks like such
familiar.
a starch.
How many district schools were there?
At the peak, there were 15 operating
Wow.
at one time,
At one time.
but there were others that came and went. There was a North Ridgebury and a South Ridgebury. There was Ridgefield, there's a Mill Plain School, now Danbury, was part of Ridgefield.
Yeah.
It started. They were really neighborhood schools.
Yeah. How could they identify all those people?
Well, because one of the people that's there supplied the picture, and
Okay.
this is what's now the lantern. Well, it's where the lantern is, because it's all burned down.
There's Brunetti's.
Brunetti's. And that's Bristol's Pharmacy to the left there. This says cherry pie, 39 cents.
What was, how,
A cherry, you buy a cherry pie for 39 cents.
Is that the building that Joe Bernetti took over?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the spot.
And the same, and for how, and what year? I just wondered, my mother used to tell me that when I had to be weighed, she would take me up and Joe Bernetti would put me on the meat scale.
Yeah, that was probably here, because Joe Bernetti worked.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
but
he
my
did.
mom said that he had the scale in the meat place. I don't know if it was there. Did he also
There was
work
also
down
He
at
worked
Carboni's?
there before he turned it
Yeah,
into a
but
park.
don't forget there was Brunetti's Market.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Down near you,
Yeah.
down down here.
No.
That's maybe when they went on, you went on
Yeah,
the
no, I
scale.
don't know, I don't know where he was, but my mother used to,
Yeah, I think you were down here. you
down
mean.
where Carboni's,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Carboni's was, okay. With Gasparini, Petrignani.
But,
No, but Mom said that's how she got me weighed.
yeah, they had a grocery store, Renee's Market, down there.
And it was always correct.
1962 was when, he made it Bernetti's Market here.
Yeah.
On Main
Right.
Street.
Yeah.
But before that, he was down on
Well, he was,
Prospect
he
and.
was
No,
the
no.
He was the
AD.
butcher there.
He was a butcher.
No, I know that, but I mean, where did Joe go before he?
He was Bernetti and Gasparini.
Yes, yeah,
That's
that was
what-
down,
That's where she got weighed.
Ernesto,
it was down where,
His
on the
father?
corner
Where
of
Dimitri's
Bailey
and all
Avenue and
that.
yeah,
Prospect,
where,
yeah.
where the Carboni's restaurant is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Didn't that become a toy store or something?
The caboose was in
The
a.
caboose.
The caboose was in an antique store
The toy.
coming up
Further up.
towards Main Street.
Oh, okay. I seem to remember going to
Mm.
the caboose.
In like
Toy
the
booth.
parking lot of where Dimitri's is.
Yeah.
Tulip candy.
Which one?
Do we know any of the kids?
Yeah, we do. We actually knew the names.
Do you know
The
that?
first one is to far left is Harry Pancotti.
Oh my God.
Oh, no kidding.
You got to help me with this name. America GM Bartlome, Lou Girometti,
Oh,
and then Harry, Matty Pambianchi.
yeah, that,
Oh, wow.
and Mr. Lupani was the teacher? then?
Aldo.
Aldo.
Sweet box, right? That was his license plate?
Yes,
Aldo was
yes,
His license was
Yeah.
SQZBX.
Yeah.
squeeze
I
box.
remember
Squeeze
that.
box.
Jimmy, oh my
Huh?
God, look at that.
Gina,
Look at
yeah.
everything.
Couldn't remember, but I really remember the
My
name.
bus driver.
Pardon?
CBS,
No,
not the same.
no, no.
How about a little history of this building?
Oh, yeah.
First National Store,
Barbara.
Mondo,
Used to be a pharmacy.
Allen, Allen.
It used to be bongos. When was it bongos? And then it was First National too.
That's where Tom Clark was the manager of the First National. That was our real first supermarket.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
And that's, I don't think the actual structure is there anymore, right? They replaced, or did they build on top of it?
They
Yeah.
built up, yeah.
It goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the conservatory is.
Yeah.
It's-
And there's a
Did
big,
they say, is this the original structure and they
Yes,
just built on
yes,
top of it?
yes.
and there's a big basement too underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we used to
Yes,
walk
yes,
downstairs
yes.
and go to Vineland.
There were
Bongos,
offices.
What did we used to go to down in the basement? There was some business down there.
Yes, it was.
Mm.
Matter of fact, Wendy Leonetti's mother used to run
Gladys.
Gladys secretarial
Ah.
kind of thing down there.
And Al's used to have their scout stuff down in that
Yes.
corner.
Maybe
Right,
the
what they
Cub
closed.
Scout.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
And the next building down was the Five and Dime for a long time.
yeah. Is it Haynes?
Haynes
Haynes.
Five and Dime.
Now,
Haynes?
when we saw the picture of the traffic light at the Main and Katuna, it was taken from the stairwell that, I think this is the shadow well. Maybe
Yeah.
it is the well, I don't know. But this is the side of the Bedient building, this is Bailey Avenue. down here. And this is where they have a scale down, I think right here. That's where they could weigh coal. You would, put the, wagon or whatever on it and, weigh it, and then they'd load it up with coal and they'd weigh it again and they'd know how much coal you had. But this is where you could also pick up food for, you know, grains and stuff. They sold, stuff for livestock here. They also, this is also a funeral parlor.
Embalming. They did embalming.
Really?
Was it,
In the hardware
What's the
store.
name of that?
one of the,
You remember?
told about the caskets coming in with the
Yeah, caskets probably came in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had some special system for getting into storage upstairs or.
Oh, the people in the caskets?
No.
The waiters.
Yeah. This is all-purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Oilcloth, linoleum, mattings, and window shades. Hardware, farming tools, furniture. Did you read that?
Was that Obedience?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a general store.
Yeah, okay.
Speaking of Brunetti's Market,
Yeah. That's a
Is
fancy
that down at the
scheme.
bottom of the hill or up
Yes.
on Main Street? Yeah.
this is down in the bottom of the
Yeah,
hill.
it did, yeah. Was it Gasparini's then?
Was it what?
Gasparini's,
This is
Brunetti,
Gasparini
Trignani?
and that's Brunetti.
Yes.
No, that's Tabby
Petrignani?
Carboni.
That's Tabby's?
Is it Tabby or, it's one of the Carbonis.
No, it goes,
I don't know.
This is,
because he was there.
It's like-
I don't know.
I think this is,
Mustache, looks like a Franciscan.
Brunetti and this is Gasparini.
Oh, okay.
The actual Bernetti house is still on the corner of East Ridge and Prospect, that yellow house. That's the original house. The house that Rudy grew up in was
Yeah.
torn down and rebuilt, but that, Mrs. Bernetti and Leah and Joe, they lived in that house on the corner of the Ridge and Prospect.
Didn't have to go far to look. This is, it's too bad it's not sharper, but, that's the Florida schoolhouse. This is one of two brick schoolhouses that have been in Ridgefield. The other was one of the versions of the Whipstick School. It didn't last long. But it was the only schoolhouse, I think, that put its name like that on it. And it's so cool. I mean, it's artfully done. And later, people just painted the whole thing over, and they just painted the letters right, the same color as the wall, and it was terrible. There was some pride in that, the way that school looked. That was on the corner of Florida Road and Florida Hill. And there would be kids from Reading would attend this school because it was too far to go in Reading to the nearest schoolhouse for them. So if they lived on, what's her name? Simpog Turnpike probably, and maybe Old Reading Road.
Reading
They
Road.
would,
Topstone,
Yeah.
they would go to this school and pay the town for it, or pay the school district for it. And this is, I mentioned him before, Frederick Fairweather, who taught at that school, or went to that school as a kid, and he taught at a couple of the schoolhouses in town, and then went to New York and joined Tiffany's, and became a designer and a representative for Tiffany's glass, stained glass windows. He designed a lot of church windows, but he remained in Ridgefield all his life. He lived on Main Street, and I think what's now the Jensen House, but I'm not positive. And commuted by that train station that we saw a little while earlier, catch the train every morning, very early. And because he was up so early in the morning to get the train, he was also the first person who used a voting machine in the town of Ridgefield. When voting machines were inaugurated around 1914 or someplace in there, he was first in line because he was up so early and cast his ballot. He was very active in St. Stephen's Church and gave them, what is the name of that thing?
A Laredo.
Does anybody know what a Laredo is?
Some kind
Kind
of
of-
decorative screen.
What's that?
Yep.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a radio, but
It's
a radio.
like a
Decorative screen.
screen.
folding screen?
And
No, like a big piece.
that he had designed. He and the minister, or he and somebody else, and St. Stephen's didn't like it.
St. Stephen's interior is very congregational looking. Whereas the Congregational Church is very ornate, Gothic looking.
Interesting, yeah.
And St. Stephen's eventually gave it to the Congregational Church. But he left a huge amount of money, well, not huge, but huge for the time,
Yeah.
a lot of money for a music fund for the church, with very specific instructions on how it could be used.
Doesn't he look like a dude?
Great
Great
mustache.
hair with it.
Yeah, it's not common in town.
What house is that?
Hermit of Ridgefield,
Oh, somebody.
George Washington Gilbert, always barefoot in spring, summer, and fall. Lived in a house that was falling down around him.
Yeah.
It was his family homestead on Florida, the north side of Florida Hill Road.
He actually lived in there?
He actually what?
Lived in there?
He lived in there when it would look worse. And he eventually, the Colonel from Brownsbury Manor
Colonel Knox.
took pity on him and built him a little cottage.
Oh, okay.
And he lived his last years there and froze to death in it. They didn't get the wood supply to him in time or something.
In fact, it's interesting, they made a postcard of that. It's a postcard that people would send.
This is from a postcard.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different postcards of him. He was a very popular tourist attraction. People would come from far and wide, and he would be glad to talk to you. And he used to pose mathematical questions and riddles and talk about the history of his family during the Revolution. And he was a very congenial guy, but never left Ridgefield. Never set foot anywhere else. That's the blacksmith on Katrina Street. And
Harry Thomas.
Thomas.
I had an age.
Jared Thomas, yeah.
who thought nothing of walking to Brewster to see his family or friends over there, or walking to Norwalk.
I guess he didn't like horses.
And that, his shop is still there. It's now used by a landscaping
Yeah.
service.
New beginnings.
New
That.
beginnings, new beginnings in it. And they fixed it up nicely. And he lived in front, right?
In the house.
Yes,
The house
in the
in front,
front.
which is
That brown house.
also still there. People have talked about tearing it down and turning it into parking, but fortunately it survived. We all,
That's Ed Dowling.
Yeah.
Ruth Ursler, the town clerk.
That's his mother behind him.
This must be when he was being sworn in as probate judge.
Okay, Judge.
He, as a young, and you can see he's a fairly young man, was I think the youngest person ever to have been elected probate judge in Ridgefield. He was a Democrat in a town full of very strongly controlled by Republicans.
Very.
And he had most recently been an FBI agent. He was a World War II hero, even though he never advertised it. I think he won 2 Purple Hearts for heroin, and he
Bronze
lives in-
Star.
and Bronze Star for heroism in Europe.
He was 29.
He was 29 when he was.
Yeah, that young, be appropriate, George.
And he, when he was an FBI agent, he used to like to tell the story about how he and another agent spent this whole lot of time very carefully working around this guy that they were tracking him and had escaped somehow, or was a bank robber or something, in a field out in Oklahoma or someplace there, and they kept getting closer and closer. Finally, they realized they'd spent 2 hours tracking a scarecrow. It was just sitting there. And he was also involved in a famous case where a woman in Bethel left her estate to someone she met through a Ouija board, and never met the person in person, it was just a spirit.
Oh.
This was another man who used to travel a route twice a year around Connecticut and western New York. He would come through, we know he came through Ridgefield. He might have also stopped in Branchville. But this was in the 1870s, 1880s.
Is he like a hobo, or was he selling something?
He just liked to walk. He didn't sell anything. He didn't go begging, but people fed him anyway. They took care of him. He lived in caves. He apparently had some money. He apparently could go to a bank somewhere over in Westminster and get enough money to buy food. But he made all his own clothes out of leather.
Here we are. Very good, Jack.
Very good.
Very nice.
If you think of any questions that should be included, or people that should be included in the encyclopedia, if you could, tell Betsy or Stephen or email me if you have my email. I put the email in the book because I want people to send information to me.
How about recipes from the Italian American Club? No?
No.
No?
Chicken
No, that's
fricassee.
all.
Sandy,
all. No,
Sandy
no.
will have them.
That could be a whole
Not
other
available.
book.
No, absolutely not. You don't give that out.
I tried.
Okay, thank you, Jack, for bringing us down memory lane and for exploring your new book, the Ridgefield Encyclopedia. If anyone is interested in purchasing a copy, we do have those available, and I'm sure Jack would be happy to autograph and personalize a book for you. They make a great gift, and our friends at Books Uncommon also have those available to purchase. I'd like to remind everyone that our next gathering is going to be Tuesday, March 18th at 10 o'clock here at the Scott House. And it's Corky Corker's 100th birthday, so we're going to be looking at some more of his photographs. We have thousands of them in the collection, and Keith has been digitizing them, and we're going to take a look at some more of those and talk about the history and try to identify some of the people in them. So thank you all for joining us, and stay warm, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.